Okay, today we're beginning a new parak. It really is a new Masechta. In fact, I'll tell you something fascinating based upon a Taisus Yantif. Do you ever wonder why the Masechta is called Pesachim? Why not call it Pesach? Pesachim. Elama. There's two Masechtas. The first Masechta is the MS, is Chametz, Matzah, Bittel, and they used to learn Arvei Pesachim also earlier, because Arvei Pesachim has to do with the Seder. That's one. And then there's a second, and it's not Pesach Sheni Yanko, it's the Korban Pesach. The Korban Pesach is a whole different ball of wax. It's all, we have 5 parakim on the Korban Pesach. And in the parakim on the Korban Pesach, we have a lot of Yesodis of Kachim. And Kachim is, again, is something that's not well known, it's not learned until the, besides Brisk and the Daf Yomi. But in fact, the Masechta Pesachim, the Kachim here is much easier to digest, excuse the pun, than Zvachim and Menachos. It's because Pesachim is worked out more. The Masechta of Menachos and Zvachim are full of Girsa changes. Rashi didn't go through it many times. We don't know. It's much harder. This is much more glatt. And I think it's important, or I think it's if you want to get into it, it's a very it's a closed. It's not so hard, and there's a special school for memory. They say people that have bad memory, they say that to learn kachim. There's a special school that kachim has that exists that people remember kachim. So I thought it appropriate. If you take a look, fellas, you see this right before that short daf yesterday. It says Seder v'Hilchos Korban Pesach Rishon B'Ktsara. I always wondered who wrote this. I never. Anyway, so I texted Sully Bornstein today, and he said somebody sent me this. And listen to this. Who wrote this? I wrote it down here. Nira, it appears Shechibroi hu Rabbi Yehuda Aryeh Leib Dayan. And then it says Beis Pei Dalid Mem. Frankfurt the Main. He was the Rav of Pei Frankfurt the Main. Some guy, I had no idea what it was. I asked the guy today. He said I didn't know either, so I asked somebody else. But so he was a Rav of Frankfurt the Main, and he was no. He was an Achmed. Ben Rav Yosef Shmuel Krakow. He wasn't, and this Yosef Shmuel Krakow seemed to be the one who printed a Shas in Amsterdam, and so probably an early Achron. But so he's the one in Machab. It's not Rashi. Rashi didn't write this, and it's not the Masorah Shas, because the Masorah Shas Mishayah comments on it, so it's not him. And he gives you a whole slew of halachas of Korban Pesach. I just want to give the following. I want to give you a little hakdam at the Kachim. Many of the things you know, many things you maybe don't know, and we'll go ahead and speak about the Korban Pesach, and not all pratim. And this is what the parak we're dealing with. So as a hakdam at the Kachim, basically, there's Kachim and Kachim Kalam. There are 8 karbanis. The predominant carbon is an oila. There's an oila. There's a chatas. There's an asham. There's a shlamim. There's a toida. There's a mincha. There's a ma'aser behema. There's a korban pesach, and there's a bechar. 8 animals. The kachei kedoshim, such as an oila chatas for asham. An oila is not eaten; it's burnt. It's burnt. It's not eaten. And chatas for asham are also kachei kedoshim. They are eaten. It's a chelik that is eaten, and it's tafka in the azara. They can't be outside the azara. It's eaten inside, and it's only eaten by males. Kachei kedoshim is only eaten by males, right? It's only eaten by males. I saw it's a meshach chachma, fascinating. Just derech hagav, I just popped into my head. The reason why women can't eat from kachei kedoshim is since it has to be eaten in azara, and women have to come to the azara, we eat taruvis. Mela, like the kachim kalam, which can eat all the Yerushalayim, some like the shai. So in Yerushalayim, women can eat anywhere they want, men can eat anywhere they want. But kachim kedoshim, which was in a small area of the azara, it would have been a priestess together. A simcha with his gainis, a gainish shachap. Okay, in every carbon, not the mincha, every animal carbon, there are 3 halakim. There's the chelik, there's the avodas adam, there's the imurim that goes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and then there's the basa. And then there's the meat. There's the meat. The avodas adam has 4 components, and that's the most important part of the carbon. The avodas adam, we have a shchita, a kabbalah, a hilacha, and zrika. Someone shechs it, You makabel it in a klishares, a keli that is kodesh, and you bring the dam over to the mizbeach, and then depending upon the carbon, you would do something with the blood, either above the line, below the line, this corner, that corner. We'll get those that are brought them really for reserve from Masechta Zvachim. But again, the key is that every avodah is for the 4 avodas in the dam. That is the essential part of a carbon. Once that's done, everything's great. Once that's done, the carbon is accepted, right? Even if the emurim are not brought, the carbon is accepted. Even if the bus is not eaten, the carbon is accepted. Now, basa can only be eaten when the emurim are burnt. The emurim is the chelik that goes to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The emurim is the chelik that goes to Hashem, and we burn it on the mizbeach hachitzain, on the outside mizbeach. We burn it. There are karbonos that the blood is spitzed on the inner mizbeach. Those are unique karbonos for Yom Kippur and for Parhelam Dava, and then the Kayin Mashiach. There's certain karbonos which are discussed in Masechta Hariyos. But over here, for our sake, the general principle is that 3 things: you have the avodas hadam, you have the imurim, and then you have what's called zrika. Now, be aware, the chatas guy, the carbon pesach is unique in the fact it's like a bechor maisa. You don't do a zrika, you do a shvicha. You don't spritz it; you just pour it on the side. You don't have to put it on the corners. Most kabbanis you have to put on the corners of the mizbeach. Here you just pour it on the base of the mizbeach, and it was a unique carbon. It was unique carbon. So that's basically, and it's kachim kalam. Most kabbanis that are kachim kalam, a toida can be eaten for 2 days and a night, a toda a day and a night, and in fact the carbon pesach can be eaten just one night. That's it. It can be eaten until the morning of the 15th. We all know that we eat until chatzos. So the carbon pesach, the window of eating the carbon pesach is very, very small, because the Rabbanan said you can only eat till chatzos, and therefore you're always busy with the afikoyim before chatzos because of the carbon pesach, the dimit to the carbon pesach. A unique thing about the carbon pesach, again, is that it can only be eaten a certain way. It can only be eaten it can only be eaten sliesh. A carbon could be eaten any which way. You can do anything you want. A kohen, if he likes to marinate, he can marinate it. If he wants to boil it, he can boil it. He likes flanken, right? He could do. But on the other hand, the carbon pesach has to be in sliesh, and there's a whole parak that describes the cooking of it. Now, there is a unique thing about eating the carbon pesach, fellas. You don't have to eat this. Eating a carbon is shiori mitzvah. You get a mitzvah to eat it, but there's no mitzvah to eat it. There's a mitzvah to eat it. It should become nicer, but there's no mitzvah to eat the carbon. In other words, if I would go ahead and bring a carbon and I say, Benji, go eat it, great. In other words, I don't have to eat my carbon. Carbon pesach, you have to eat your carbon. It's a mitzvah to eat the carbon. It's a mitzvah on women as well to eat the carbon pesach. So carbon pesach is unique in the way it's cooked and the fact that it has to be eaten. It also has to be eaten by women as well as men. It has to be. You have to register for the carbon pesach. If you don't register, you can be part of it. It has to be limanuyov, the people are counted in, and the shechita has to be l'shem oichlav. In other words, if you shech the carbon pesach for a chayla, a person who's sick, it's not good. Carbon would be invalidated. There's another chumrah of the carbon pesach that we paskin that a carbon that's shechted shaloi l'shma, that's shechted, let's say shechted oil for a shlomim, or vice versa, the carbon is accepted, but the owner has to bring another one. There's 2 carbonos that the carbon will not be accepted: achatas and the carbon pesach. With first Mishnah in Zvachim, right? First Mishnah in Zvachim, if you go ahead and bring the carbon shaloi l'shma, you bring a carbon pesach same shlomim, right? It won't be good. Even though a carbon pesach the rest of the year, fellas, is a shlomim. The carbon pesach, if it's not Yudalit, the carbon pesach is only Yudalit in the morning, to be sure. But any other time of the year, it's a shlomim. Nonetheless, it would not work. So these are some of the halachas. There's one more halacha. The carbon pesach usually was accompanied with a carbon chagiga. The carbon pesach has to be eaten. It has to be eaten al soiva. It has to be when you're satiated, right? So therefore, let's say you'd have a lot of people, and you had one carbon pesach. So it's basically a dessert. So they would go ahead and bring a shalmei chagiga accompanying it, and the chagiga would be their main meal, and they would have the carbon pesach be eaten al soiva for as dessert. That's the way it was eaten. That's the way it was eaten. Now, so with that in mind, let's begin. with that in mind, again, I gave you a lot of information. I threw it out very quickly, but again, it's basically just think about the carbon. We're going to speak about dam. Now, every day there was 2 karbanos that had to be brought. It's a carbon tamid. In other words, no matter what, you brought the carbon tamid. That's what a tamid means all the time. It's a carbon oila. It's one baboika and one ben arabayim. Ben arabayim means when the sun begins to go ahead and settle, like it goes. Arabayim is the shirish of Orev, the west. It begins to go to the west. So the last carbon of the day is the carbon tamid shel ben arabayim. After that, no other carbon is brought, with one exception, the carbon pesach. The carbon pesach was brought after the carbon tamid. So I'm Mishnah is going to deal with the time span of bringing the tamid, depending upon the day, and the carbon pesach that's brought accordingly. Says the Mishnah, tamid nishchat b'shmeina u'mechza. But on a perfect day, you have 12 hours in the day from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. The carbon tamid is brought 8.5 hours into the day. It's going to be brought 8.5 hours into the day. The korev b'tisha u'mechza, and it's completed 9.5 hours in the day. So it's brought at 2:30 and completed by 3:30. It goes to 2:30. That's a regular day, regular carbon tamid. Now, ba'arvei pesachim, on Erev Pesach, where you're going to have to bring the carbon pesach after it, correct? You have to bring the carbon pesach after it. Then nishchat b'shevel mechza, the tamid will be brought b'shevel mechza. It'll be brought 7.5 hours into the day. The korev b'shmeina mechza. Korev means it's burnt. I mean, it's the process of the dam and cutting out the emurim and burning it takes an hour. That would be an hour later, 8.5 hours in the day. Bein b'choil, bein b'shabbos. This will not make a difference whether Erev Pesach falls out during the week. It doesn't make a difference whether Erev Pesach falls on Shabbos. You're going to bring the tamid at 7.5 hours into the day, complete it 8.5 hours, and bring the Pesach afterwards. However, Chal, what? Yeah, yes.
No carbon tamid. We said the only thing is no seder. There's no carbon tamid.
But the tamid, of course, no. The other thing is Toid is not bought. A carbon toid is not bought because it has accompanying chalas which are chametz. Mordechai, if you would bring a carbon toida, we had the Gemara earlier. There was a lot. Yeah, maybe you can get it. Oh, no, you okay? You got hurt. I'm sorry.
Survive COVID just to get hit next in.
I think it's up beyond.
And the Rangers beat beyond this 5-zip. Anyway, so who's going to mention that? Anyway.
That thinking counts.
So do you remember how, and in Shir we had a Gemara where they would put the breads of the Taida on top. It announced to the people that it's time to finish eating your chametz. 2 you could eat, 1 you didn't, 2 you burnt. That Taida was because it was a day earlier. Because they used to bring all the carbon taidas on your gimel, because you couldn't bring it on your dalid, because you're not allowed to bring the lechem what to the pesach psul. So that's why you don't say missing the Saida. Not because of the tamid, but because of the I'm sorry you got hurt. Okay. Put salt on the wounds. So that's the reason. Okay, very geschmack. So this now what happens when if it falls Erev Pesach falls on Erev Shabbos. Chal Erev Pesach liyos Erev Shabbos. Now here's the problem. After you brought your carbon Pesach, that's one thing. Then you had to bring it home and roast it. But if it's an Erev Shabbos, you won't be able to roast it. You need more time. So you had to go ahead and bring it earlier. So now, Chal Erev Pesach liyos Erev Shabbos. The Nishchat b'sheishu mechza. The carbon tamid was brought 6.5 hours in the day. The korev b'shevel mechza, and it'll be completed 7.5 hours into the day. So by 1:30 you were done, right? Pesach achrav, the Pesach we brought afterwards. Because again, we want to buy more time because you're going to have to go ahead and roast it Erev Shabbos. You're not going to have time. So therefore, okay. So we begin. The regular time is 8.5 to 9.5. 8.5 is the beginning. Erev Pesach is 7.5. On Friday, 6.5. Those are the hours.
So you want to bring it 6.5, or we push it off for whatever reason.
Okay, so not for whatever reason. It's a very good reason. This is very good. Okay, Yankel is the Gemara. Yankel is chapping the Gemara rice. The Gemara really this man is Bein Arabayim. Bein Arabayim is when, as soon as the sun begins to go into the west. So after Chatzos, it begins to go to the west. What happens if you're going to bring the Tamid right away, 6.5 hours? Any neder and dove, any other carbon that a person would want to bring, you can't bring because again, the last carbon of the day, with the exception of carbon Pesach, was the Tamid. So what would they do? They would delay it till 8.5 hours to ensure anyone who wanted to bring a carbon could bring it before.
So in this particular year of Erev Shabbos, they wouldn't have anything else. They would do it
The, right, again, and when it, right, this you make sure your neder and a dove is put before, right? Okay, neder and a dove, again, you're donating a carbon. It's not a chiyuv. We're not speaking about chiyuvim. Right, but that's the story. That's the reason over here. Okay, now where? When? No. Shlita, you can't. No, during after again, after 8.5 hours on a regular. Yeah, that's when it's shechted. We're going to have a whole process. It's shchita, the removal of the imurim. The imurim were put on the birth on mizbeach, and the process of getting 1,000,000 karbonis, the blood spritzed, is supposed to be a scene described like unbelievable. The silver, gold. We're going to see it's a whole process. The Gemara is going to describe at length what transpired, but it was you can't bring a carbon at night. By Yom Savoso, it says the day I command during the day. You can't bring a carbon at night. Carbon's only brought during the day. Okay, now Minani Mili. How do you know 8.5 hours, guys? Where does all of a sudden you pop up with 8.5 hours. Where does 8.5 hours come from? Okay, where does 8.5 hours come from? Okay, I'm Rabbi Shua ben Levi. Damakra, the pasuk says, "Esa keves echad taseh b'boker." One keves you should go ahead and do in the morning. That's the carbon tamid shel shachris. Esa keves hasheni, and the second keves taseh ben rabayim, and the second keves you should bring ben rabayim. Now, Rashi says it didn't have to say Ben Rabbayim, it could have said Be'erev. What's Ben Rabbayim? Chilkeu lebein shnei arovim. Bei shoys lemetzel lakan, shtei shoys lemetzel lakan, b'sho'achas lasiyosai. So very good. If you take Ben Rabbayim, you have 6 hours remaining in the day. Ben Rabbayim, divide that into 2. That's 2.5 to 5, and 1 hour to go ahead and bring it. So that encompasses the 6 hours that you have to play with. So when do you bring it? 2.5 hours in. From 6 to 2.5 is 8.5. And that's where you get 8.5 from. So the fact that it said Ben Rabbayim rather than Erev, it's dividing that time span of 6 into two and a halves, which is 5, 2.5, 2.5, and 1 hour, as we said, right, of preparation of shchita and Kabbalah and Srika, cutting out the imurim, burning it, 9.5. Good. So that's his thing. So Pashtus, guys, it's a pasuk in the Torah. Pashtus, the time is not like 6.5 hours in the day, like we said in the Mishnah. Pashtus, the earliest you can bring it, based upon the Torah, is mashma 8.5 hours in the day. That's what the mashma says. Masav Rava, Ba'arvei Pesachim, on Erev Pesach, Ba'arvei Pesachim on Erev Pesach, Nishchat b'shevu mechza. You're going to go ahead and bring it when? 7.5 hours in. You're going to bring it 7.5 hours in. V'kara b'shmoina umechza. Bein b'chol, bein b'shabbos. So Erev Pesach, we're going to go ahead and take the 8.5 and take an hour back. Fred Rava, V'yisak edaitach, b'shmoina umechza, the Araisa. And if you're going to tell me the Bein Abayim, that what? It's the Araisa that the earliest you can bring it is 8.5 hours in, right? How could they bring it back 7.5? How could they? In other words, it's not the Zman. If you're telling me this is the pasuk, like you have a Zman for davening, you have a Zman for bringing a carbon. If you're telling me 8.5 is 8.5, you can 7.5, 8.5, right? It's not. So how could that be? That's the question Rava says. So what's the answer? The answer is like we just said, Beganko. Elama Rava, mitzvasei de tamid is when mishiyanatu tzlalei erev, when the shadow begins to go into the west. When the shadow begins to go into the west, that is what? That is the time. It begins to go into the west at what? 12 and a half. My timer, Damakra ben Rabbayim. Me'idna the maskal shimshal amayriv. From the time the sun begins to incline to the west. So question. So why do we do 8.5 if you can do 6.5? If the earliest you can do is 6.5, why are we delaying 2 hours for the carbon tamid? Hilkach, B'shayimos Hashana, the rest of the days of the year, Te'ikin the Dorm and the Davos, you have the carbon oilers and the carbon shlomim, right? That people want to bring. The Rachmana Amar, Aleha, it says, guys, the Arach Aleha Oila, the Hikta Aleha Chelve Shlomim. And you should burn on the Talmud, guys, Chelve Shlomim. What does that mean? Aleha Chelve Shlomim. On it, fats of Shlomim. V'amar, Aleha Hishlim Kol Karbanis Kulam. In other words, don't read it as the carbon Shlomim. Read it as the shoirish of Sholem, complete. And that carbon is the day's karbanis complete. After the carbon Tamid Shabin Abayim, Zehu. So what happens if you bring it 6.5 hours into the day? All the karbanis, you know what? Remember you say bankers hours? You know, the bankers hours. That bankers hours, your bank was open to 3 o'clock. That was it. You keep bankers hours. Not anymore, right? Now you get. Okay, I'm saying. So now, can you imagine you have a carbon only to 6.5 hours in the day? What are you going to do? Crazy. You won't be able to get your karbanis in. So to facilitate people bringing their karbanis, they delayed the carbon tamid till 8.5. Because once 8.5, shop was closed. Once 8.5, you will close the business. No more karbanis. So therefore, kol karbanis kulam ma'achrina leitati shah. They would go ahead and delay from 6.5 to 8.5. They delay 2 hours. And they would go ahead wide and delay it till 8.5. But Arvei Pesachim on Erev Pesach, the Ikar Pesach Achrav, that you're gonna have to bring the Pesach after the carbon tamid. Kadmina leisha achas. Therefore, we bring it back 1 more hour, right, to 7.5. V'afdina lebeshevu mechza. Chal Erev Pesach liyas v'Shabbos. If it falls out of Shabbos, dikanamitz liyasayd loidachi Shabbos. You have the cooking that's not the Shabbos. Mokmina le'adina b'sheish mechza. We'll go ahead wide and put it on the din of 6.5. So very geschmack. So let's go through that side. So we have three smanim, guys. 8.5, 7.5, 6.5. 8.5 is what is the regular. Really, when could you bring it from? 6.5. Why do we say 8.5? Because again, that's the final carbon, and therefore we want people to be able to bring all their donations and all their karbanis. So very good 8.5. On a regular Erev Pesach during the Chayil, 7.5. Why? Because we're gonna have to bring carbon Pesach afterwards. It's gonna be a busy day. And when Erev Pesach falls on Shabbos, where in addition to bringing it, you're gonna have to roast it because you can't roast it on Shabbos. Therefore, you keep it on etzem din of 6.5. So that very nice, good. Okay, the next piece of Gemara is hard. Okay, so I sent it to your phones. If you have it on your phones, right? If you don't, if you have it on your phones, right? You have your phone here? Mama Kaba. There you go, here. You must have your phone. What? It's on WhatsApp. I can't use the signal, guys. I have no idea what's going on there. And WhatsApp, they said this. Yeah, I think we can go back to WhatsApp. Signal. Yeah, Steve, I don't know how to do anything on Signal.
Benji's the boss.
Okay. Let me pull this up. Okay, it's a nice chart. Okay. Now look, the first words on the chart. Okay, guys, listen. We're going to learn pshat in the words. The words that we're learning pshat in are on the right side. It says kisidura dechayil, kach sidura b'Shabbos, divrei Rabbi Yishmael. So he says, going all the way to the right and up, he says kisidura b'chayil, the same way what we're misader it b'chayil, that's a misader b'Shabbos. Now, what chayil are we speaking about? Chayil of which day? Which day chayil? Erev Pesach chayil, regular chayil, right? And we're speaking about the carbon tamid. And then Rabbi Akiva, go down one box below. Rabbi Akiva says kisidura b'erev Pesach. So therefore, we want to know, we have 3 pshatim in this machlokus between Rabbi Yishmael and Rabbi Akiva. We're going to do one by one. We'll do in the Gemara. Let's do the first one, Abaya. Now, Abaya learns when it says kisidura b'chayil, it's speaking about Erev Pesach chayil. It's not speaking about regular Tamid Chayil. It's not speaking about a regular Monday. It's speaking about the Tamid on an Erev Pesach Monday. Good? Got it? So too is Erev Pesach Shabbos. Rabbi Yishmael says there's no difference between Erev Pesach Monday and Erev Pesach Shabbos. What time would you bring it Erev Pesach Monday, guys? 7.5. Guys, Erev Pesach Monday, 7.5, right? So too Erev Pesach Shabbos, 7.5. So therefore that's Pshat. Kisidur b'choyol, just like Erev Pesach's in the choyol, kach sidur b'Shabbos, so too Erev Pesach is on Shabbos. That's the way Abaye learns Pshat in Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Akiva says Kisidura b'Erev Pesach, meaning Erev Pesach Shabbos, guys, will be the same thing. Erev Pesach Shabbos will be the same thing as Erev Pesach on when it falls out on Shabbos itself. Erev Pesach Shabbos is like Erev Pesach Erev Shabbos, and just like Erev Pesach Erev Shabbos is 6.5, so to Erev on Shabbos it'll also be 6.5. The current Pesach is for Shabbos. Current Pesach is for Shabbos. The shchita, not the cooking, right? Not the cooking, but you would go ahead and you would bring it at 6.5. So that's what he says. So he fills in those words that way. So let's see. That's his pshat. So let's see it inside. Abaye Amar Abaye says, Anabanan, Kisiduroi, the Seder of what? The Seder of the carbon tamid. B'choyol, Kach Sidur b'Shabbos, so too is the Seder of the carbon tamid on Shabbos. Divrei Rabbi Yishmael. These are the words of Rabbi Yishmael. Rabbi Kiva Omer, Kisidur b'Erev Pesach. It's like Erev Pesach. Now, who knows my comma? What exactly? Guys, you said words, you could touch the words. What do you mean? What are we speaking about? Which Chayil, which Shabbos, what am I speaking about? Erev Pesach, Erev Shabbos, regular Shabbos. What my Kamar? When the Gemara says my Kamar, means those words are ambiguous, you just said. They don't make any sense. So now, Amr Abaya, here's what the words mean. Hachi Kamar. This is what Rabbi Yishmael said. When he said Kisidur b'choyel, you know what he meant? Kisidur b'choyel be'erev Pesach, just like a Choyel Erev Pesach, guys, which is 7.5 hours in the day. Erev Pesach Monday, Erev Pesach Tuesday, Erev Pesach Wednesday, 7.5 hours, right? All you have to do is bring it back 1 hour to allow for the Korban Pesach afterwards. Kach Sidur b'Shabbos be'erev Pesach. So too, Misada b'Shabbos, when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos. When Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos, also 7.5 hours. Guys, good? So Erev Pesach Chayil, Erev Pesach Shabbos. So speaking, just like Erev Pesach on Monday is 7.5 hours, so to Erev Pesach on Shabbos is what? Is 7.5 hours. Not Erev Pesach, Erev Shabbos. Erev Pesach, Shabbos, 7.5 hours. Good? Rabbi Akiva, no. Kisidur b'Erev Pesach shechal yis b'Erev Shabbos. Kach sidur b'Shabbos. Pesach on Shabbos is the same way as Erev Pesach on Erev Shabbos. Just like Erev Pesach and Erev Shabbos is 6.5, so too Erev Pesach on Shabbos is 6.5. So they argue about Shabbos itself. Shabbos itself. Says Rabbi Yishmael, 7.5. Says Rabbi Akiva, 6.5. That's a baya. But guys, you see how they're sticking into the words of the Brisa, the ambiguous words. I'm trying to, if you look at the chart, I stuck the words on the line. Where it says Kisidur b'Chayil, I wrote Erev Pesach Chayil. Kisidur b'Shabbos, I wrote Erev Pesach Shabbos, right? You see? I lined it up. That's the word that they're going on. Next, Rava. Okay, Kisidur b'Chayil, what does that mean? Regular Chayil. What does regular Chayil mean? Regular Chayil, guess what? A Tomei b'Chayil, not Pesach. A Tomei b'Chayil, right? Tomei b'Chayil, what? 8.5, yeah? So too, Erev Pesach on Shabbos is also 8.5. Erev Pesach on Shabbos, when Erev Pesach falls on Shabbos, right? Also 8.5. That's what Rabbi says, 8.5. We'll have a reason in the Gemara for this. And Rabbi Akiva says no. When it says Erev Pesach Shabbos, it's like Erev Pesach Chayil. Just like Erev Pesach Chayil is 7.5. So it's right, Monday is 7.5. So too Erev Pesach Shabbos, both 7.5. So that's your machlokes. 8.5 for 7.5, 7.5 for 6.5, 8.5 and 7.5. Good. So let's see inside. Let's see Rava. Okay, now. Umasnisa and the Kani, and the Mishnah that learns Bein b'chol, bein b'Shabbos. Rabbi Shmuel, it's called Rabbi Shmuel, who equates Shabbos and, as opposed to Rabbi Kiva, who says it's different. But my comiflagi, what are they arguing? The musafin koibin lovasichin. This Abaya's machlokes. Now, you bring a carbon musaf, guys, and you bring vasichin. Vasichin is the lechem upon him was on the shulchan. It stayed on the whole week, and there was this changing of the guard took place on Shabbos. The mishma going in, the mishma going out. They would divide lechem upon him. What was the matir of the lechem upon him? They would burn this frankincense, this vasichin, these two little pots. Once they burnt them, that permitted what? That permitted the lechem upon him to be divided up. That permitted the lechem upon him to be divided up. So now, what took place before the carbon musaf or that? So musaf and carbon vasichin comifli. Rabbi Shmuel savar. Rabbi Shmuel is of the opinion. Rabbi Shmuel holds that that the musaf comes before the vasichin, and therefore you needed more time, and therefore we're 7.5 hours in the day. So avalei musaf and b'sheish. You did the musaf in 6, ubazichin b'sheva, and bazichin is in 7. V'avidlei l'tamid b'sheva mechza, and the tamid we brought 7.5. So therefore, 7.5 is the delay to bring the musaf and the bazichin. Rekiva sava bazichin koibin l'musafin, that the act of the bazichin was meaning the act of the lechem upon him was before the musaf. Bazichin b'chamesh, you did that in the 5th hour. Musaf b'sheish, v'avidlei tamid b'sheish mechza. Therefore, take a look at chart. This is Abaya, guys. Abaya's chart, you got it. 7.5. Where do you get 7.5 from? You get the musaf in. You have the musaf was brought in the 6th hour. The vazichin was brought in the 7th hour, and the tamid was brought 7.5 hours. Rabbi Kiva says no, that the carbon the vazichin is brought 5. The carbon musaf is brought 6, and then they brought the carbon tamid in 6.5. Maskal Rava. Midi Rabbi Kiva kisidur be'erev Shabbos chalias be'erev Shabbos katani. Kisidur be'erev Pesach stomach katani. Guys, look at the first box of Rabbi Akiva. Look at these words. The first box of Rabbi Akiva, right? Bottom right. It says Rabbi Akiva kisiduroi be'erev Pesach. Good. That's all he said. How did Abaya translate it? Erev Pesach on Erev Shabbos. He just said Erev Pesach. He didn't say Erev Pesach on Erev Shabbos. Again, I lined up the words of Rabbi Akiva with Rabbi Akiva says Erev Pesach. Says Abaye, you know what it means? Erev Pesach on Erev Shabbos. Says the Rabbi, that's missing over here. You're sticking stuff in that doesn't make sense. So therefore, Rabbi is going to say his pshat. El Amar Rava. Again, let's go back to the chart before we see Rava one more time. Let's go back to the chart. Rabbi says when Rabbi Shmuel says Kisidur b'choyel, we're not speaking about Pesach at all. We're speaking about a regular carbon tamid that's bought 8.5 hours in the day. So that the way it's bought b'choyel, that's the same way it's bought when Erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos. Kasidur b'Shabbos. Kechoyel b'Shabbos, it fits in the words. Rabbi Akiva says no. Rabbi Akiva says Erev Pesach Shabbos is like Erev Pesach Choyel. Just like Erev Pesach Choyel is 7.5, Erev Pesach Shabbos is 7.5. Elam Rava Hachi Kamar. Kisidur b'Choyel da'alma. Just like regular chol dalma, not Pesach. A carbon tamid is brought 8.5 hours. A regular chol day. Kach sidura b'Shabbos b'erev Pesach. So too on erev Pesach falls out on Shabbos. You're going to bring it 8.5 hours in the day. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva says no. Kisidura b'erev Pesach. Right. The way it's brought on Shabbos is the same way it's brought on erev Pesach b'choil. Now, just like b'choil, erev Pesach b'choil, guys, on a Monday is 7.5. So too, Erev Pesach Shabbos is 7.5. And now, when it says Bein B'chol Bein B'Shabbos is Rabbi Akiva. The Tani Bein B'chol Bein B'Shabbos is going Rabbi Akiva. He 7.5 hours into the day. What's the machlokes between the Tanakh and Rabbi Akiva? So, my comifli, the Mechamer Bisra comifli. If it's going to get heated up and spoiled, guys, if it's going to get heated up and spoiled, you want to delay bringing the carbon as much as possible. Correct? So Rabbi Shmuel, who says 8.5 hours, guys, obviously he's worried about the carbon becoming wrong. Rabbi Shmuel Sava, Chashina lemichmar bisra, v'chayesh v'lat, for its basa becoming heated up. Rabbi Kiva Sava, lo chashina lemichmar bisra. We're not chayesh lemichmar bisra, and therefore we can delay it to 7.5. That is the pshat. Now, Fred the Gemara, lo chashinon, if you're not chayesh for the basar getting spoiled, if you're not worried about that, the bus is getting spoiled, Why don't you just put it in its right time? Do it 6.5, not 7.5. And Gemara Ksavim was Safim Kaidin was Zichin. He held that the Rabbi held that Rabbi Kiva held that the Musaf comes first, and therefher other living Ksavim b'Sheish, they did the Musaf in the 6th, uBezichin b'Sheva, the Avlei Tamid b'Sheva uMechza. Good, that's Rabbi's opinion.
How would you make a difference in meat getting root?
What?
How would you the meat? It's root at the Shabbos when
Again, if you're chayish for it, you want it as much as possible. Be as close, right? Again, you know, when if you, well, Elaine, we've all had the experience of having electricity go down, and you're always wondering, yes, no. All of a sudden I said electricity, Ari Katz went like this. It's like this. You're always wondering about electricity going down. Yeah, you're gonna open the fridge or open this and this and this, and every minute counts, right? So the same thing. Same thing.
Why does it say 6.5 hours? Because normally during the week it says we're doing it 7.5. They're saying, why don't you move it back to regular thing to 7.5? Because the 6.5 was only for Shabbos. You have to cook it. Why is it saying 6.5?
No, he's saying that you're keeping 7.5 on Pesach. If you're not, if on this is on Erev Pesach on Shabbos, right?
Right. Is there Pesach on
Yeah.
Shabbos? They're saying, why don't you push it back to 6?
So you're not. If the whole reason you keep doing 7.5 and not 8.5 is because of spoilage, so do 6.5.
So that's for the whole week, not just for Shabbos.
I'm saying even the whole week, even before.
They're saying the whole right. So why? But the whole week is the we're saying during the a regular on a Tuesday, you're bringing it at 7.5, right? You're not bringing it at 6.5. You bring it at 7.5.
No, but this difference between Shabbos during the week you can bring the Darim and the Davos, so therefore you have to delay. Shabbos is not the Darim and the Davos.
Even there are Pesach, they're in the Dharma and the Davos?
No Darim and Davos.
Right, so on a regular...
Yeah, no, there are. No, regular. Yes, there are. There's the Darim. So you're going to make it 7.5, right?
You're going to make it 7.
Right, you're going to delay. But Shabbos is not the Darim, so there will be 6.5.
Busy. Dharma is crazy busy then. Because that was in the regular, we'll bring all of them. So you have to get as much time as possible.
I don't know. I think that.
It's not a Shabbos, but
Yeah, no.
it's a rush to bring the Dharma.
No, I'm just answer to your question, right?
You know, I got it.
That's yeah. The Rashi says that. Rashi says, I'm not telling you that stuff. Okay, now, is there any kasha on Rava? Yeah, we're gonna have a kasha on Rava too. So Rava's kasha on Abaya. It doesn't say anything about Erev Pesach, Erev Shabbos, just as Erev Pesach. Doesn't say Erev Shabbos, or just Erev Shabbos. Now, the Maskevla Rava Bar Ula, Rabba Bar Ula. Midi kisidroi b'choil kach sidur b'Shabbos, be'erev Pesach, direi v'shmol ketani, kach sidur b'Shabbos ketani. He didn't say anything about Erev Pesach. It said b'Shabbos. In other words, he only mentioned Shabbos. What's the words Rabbi Shmuel? Just like it's the choil, so it's by Shabbos. So why did he bring in Pesach at all? Guys, the literal translation, just like it is with choil, the carbon tabid during the week, so too the carbon tabid is on Shabbos. Rava brought in also Pesach, right? Now you, Rava, have a problem with a bias Erev Pesach. Rabbi Barula has a problem with your Pesach. So therefore, guess what? It's not speaking Pesach at all. Look at the chart. Guys, look at the chart. So what did Rabbi Shmuel say? Kisidur b'chayil, the way it is in the chayil, so it is b'Shabbos. Meaning, just like the carbon tummy is brought 8.5 hours in the day, so too on Shabbos it's brought 8.5 hours in the day. And even though on Shabbos you don't have the svar of the delay because there's no Darim in the Davos, still you're being 8.5 hours. Why? Probably you're worried about meat spoiling. I don't know. So that's his svar, right? Now I think we're worried about is the following. If we go ahead and push up Shabbos, you may come to push up during the week. Be consistent at 8.5. Guys, listen up. During the week, why are we delaying to 8.5 hours? Because if you bring it at 6.5, closing up shop, right? If you, even though it doesn't apply to Shabbos, let's have a consistent closing time. So during the week, you won't come to what? Close it. So therefore, he says 8.5. Now notice, he didn't mention anything about what? Pesach. Zero. He just said. And now, what about Rabbi Akiva? Now, Rabbi Akiva did mention Pesach. Rabbi Akiva said, Kesidur b'erev Pesach, meaning, what? On Shabbos, we'll treat it like Erev Pesach Choil. Erev Pesach Choil is 7.5, Shabbos is 7.5. Very geschmack, right? Okay, you see all in the chart? It's all there. All the words are there in the chart, like right in front of you. Okay, Maskala Rabba Ravula, Mide Kesidur b'Choil, Kach Sidur b'Shabbos b'Erev Pesach, Direi v'Shmol Ketani, Kach Sidur b'Shabbos Stomach Ketani, nothing to do about Erev Pesach. Ella Lashon Charot. Elama Rabba Ravula, here's Pshat, Hachi Ketani. Kisidur b'choil the alma, just like Tamid is bought b'choil the alma 8.5 hours in the day. Kach sidur b'Shabbos, so too it's bought 8.5 hours in the day the alma, regular Shabbos. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva Omer, Rabbi Kiva says no. Sidur b'Erev Pesach the alma 7.5 hours in the day. Kach sidur b'Shabbos the alma 7.5 hours a day. Umastis niktani bein b'chol bein b'Shabbos divrei kolhi. Now it's according to everybody, not just according to Rabbi Shmuel, not just according to Rabbi Kiva. It works out according to everybody.
Each one cancels out the other. I guess the Nadar and the Davis, and the fact that you get a Vash to the Shabbos.
They don't cancel out. It just you don't go ahead. There are no Nedarim and Davis and Shabbos. The question is, are you gonna?
So we can be consistent with the 7.5 because on Shabbos there's no 7. There's
Right.
no,
Yeah. But my kamiflagi, or what's the machloikis between again in Rabbi Bar Ula? What's the machloikis? Because there is nedavais and nedarim kamiflagi. The guys and nedarim nedavais. Rabbi Shmuel Sava Gazmin on Shabbos at the Choyel. Rabbi Shmuel says we're going to Shabbos at the Choyel and therefore 8.5. Just like Chol is 8.5, Shabbos is 8.5. Rabbi Kiva Sava like Gazmin on. Now the question is, we're not going to 7.5. You like Gazmin on never that bevavu mechza. I said we'll go to 6.5. No, there's no nedarim and nedavis. You're not being geyser, right? Go to 6.5. What's the answer? Kesavim musafim kaibin lebazichin. Musafim b'sheish, musichin b'zayin, v'avalei l'tamid b'zayin l'mechza. Geschmack? The Kohanim are busy. Okay, my Kohanim are busy. Okay, so just that's what time is it? Okay, quickly let's go over the chart quick. Okay, says Abaya. Abaya is going to be 7.5 and 6.5. Abaya says it's speaking about Erev Pesach Choyel going to Erev Pesach Shabbos, and just like Erev Pesach Choyel is 7.5, Erev Pesach Shabbos is also 7.5 because the Musaf comes before V'zichin. According to Rabbi Akiva, the V'zichin comes first. I can bring that in hour 5, therefore it's 6.5. Rabbi says no, it's speaking a regular Chol day is compared to Erev Pesach Shabbos is a regular Chol day. And why do you delay so long? Because you're worried about spoilage. That's Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Akiva says no, we don't compare it to a regular Chol day. We compare it to a Erev Pesach day. Erev Pesach Chol is 7.5. So to Erev Pesach Shabbos is 7.5, and you're not worried about spoilage. Rabbi Bar Ula had a problem mentioning Pesach at all. It's not speaking about Pesach at all. It's speaking about regular Rabbi Shmuel Chol Shabbos. Just like Chol is 8.5, so to Shabbos is 8.5. And with Goisa, that if you're going to go ahead and bring on Shabbos earlier, you may come to go ahead and bring it earlier on during the week, so we can stay with a consistent time. And Rabbi Q says no, we're not worried about mixing up Chol and Shabbos. And the reason why we do 7.5, not 6.5, because you have to bring the Karban Musaf and the V'zichin. Okay, that's what we have. Okay, Meisirei. Tamid Kol Hashana Kula, the Tamid all the days of the year, Korav Kil Chasai, right? Nishchat B'Shmeina Mechza, 8.5 hours in a day. The Korav B'Tesu Mechza, and it's burnt what? It's burnt in 9.5 hours in a day. Wherever Pesach Nishchat B'Zayin Umechza. The Korav B'Chesu Mechza. The Chaliyos B'Shabbos. Kechaliyos B'Sheni B'Shabbos. If it falls out Pesach, Erev Pesach on Shabbos, guys, it's the same way if it falls out what on Monday. So who now? That means what? 7.5 hours in the day. Bishleim Shabbos. Divrei Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva Omer Kisidura be'Erev Pesach. So it's like what on Erev Pesach, which is 6.5. And Bishleim Labaya Nicha. Very according to Abaya, we have the number 7.5 and 6.5. It works out. El Rava Kasha, like Rava, we don't have 8.5, 7.5. Guys, we have 7.5 and 6.5. We don't have what? Guys, one more time. I'm going to say the words. Put in the numbers. Guys, watch. One more time. Massive, we're bringing a brisa. Okay, now watch. Mesive. Let's put the times in. Now look at the chart. Abaya is 7.5, Abaya is 7.5, 6.5, and Rava is 8.5, 7.5, right? So that's the words, that's the numbers. Now watch. Tamid Kol Hashana Kula, Korav Kil Chasai, what does that mean? Nishchat B'Shemana 8.5, Korav B'Tesu Mechza 9.5. Erev Pesach, Erev Pesach, Nishchat B'Zayin Mechza, Korav B'Chesu Mechza. Now here, Chaliyos B'Shabbos, Kechaliyos B'Sheni B'Shabbos. That means what? If it falls out Erev Pesach on Shabbos, it's like it falls out on Monday, 7.5. Erev Pesach Monday, 7.5. Erev Pesach Shabbos is what? 7.5. Look at your chart. Abaya says 7.5. Rava says 8.5. So the brisa seems to substantiate Abaya. 7.5. Good. Continues on. Chalias b'Shabbos. Rabbi Shmuel. Rabbi Kiva Omer kisiduroi be'erev Pesach. It's like what? If it's like erev Pesach. Erev Pesach, if it falls out, is how many hours? 6.5. 6.5. Erev Pesach. You have to boil it before. So therefore, it works out good according to Abaya. 7.5, 6.5. Bishlam Abaya nicha el Rava kasha, because Rava said 8.5 and 7.5. Amlach Rava loy tema kechal b'sheni b'Shabbos. Don't say if it falls out. Don't say if it falls out on Shabbos, it's like it falls on Monday. Elema kesheni b'Shabbos alma, like 8.5 hours. In other words, not an erev Pesach on a Monday, a regular Monday. What's a regular Monday? 8.5. Not a Pesach, 8.5. Very geschmack. Mesibei chaliyos b'Shabbos. If Pesach falls on Shabbos, kisiduroi kol hashana kula. It's like the rest of the day. The years was mashma 8.5, right? 8.5. The Rabbi Shmuel, Rabbi Kiva Omer, kisiduroi be'erev Pesach. It's like erev Pesach, which is 7.5, 8.5 and 7.5. This is good according to who, guys? Rava 8.5, 7.5, right? Right. Bishleim el Rava nichel l'baya kasha, because he said 7.5, 6.5. Amlachabaya loy tema kisidura kol hashana. Don't say like the cedar of the whole days of the year, which is 8.5 hours. Elaim kisidura kol hashanim, like the seder word of every kol hashanim erev Pesach b'choyel, like all the erev Pesach during the years, which is 7.5. Kol divrei Rabbi Shmuel. Kiva ama kisidura erev Pesach shchalias be'erev Shabbos. Okay. I guess this is a good place to stop. Okay, this is a good place to stop.
When they clean for coming then.
What?
When they clean for coming,
What?
if they come in, the Chalas are brought on the day before. Erev Pesach is Shabbos, right?